Welcome back. The
Oh.
Chateau de Arborescence.
Arborescence, Le Chateau. It's been fun to infuse a little French into our thing, huh?
Oh, man. I hesitate to call us using French. Like, I don't know. What if a French person heard this and, like,
Oh, pure offense.
just murder us for our accents? Or if they could even understand what we were trying to say.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably dip our toes into any language and we're going to offend anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's just like us in the active process of classing down Le Chateau de Arborescence.
Yeah, we take something nice and we make it really ugly. How can we take something beautiful and make it ashes? Yeah.
We just make it real.
We just make it real.
Yeah.
But we've trained ourselves to be okay with that in our own lives. Huh?
Yeah. Welcome back. So here we are. Who we got on the docket today?
Man, we got Neil Weintraub. This is a great one.
It is. There's some good stories that come out. Neil's just chock full of anecdotes, right?
Yeah.
Right at the end.
Yeah.
Just to give a little sneak peek, drips into the shady underbelly of Flagstaff in the mid 1980s.
Yeah. With Shaky Drakes.
Shaky Drakes.
Shaky Drakes.
I mean, how can a place be called Shaky Drakes and not be nefarious in some way?
Yeah, some sort of front for like a laundering kind of thing or something, huh? Yeah. Who knows what Shaky Drakes was really about?
Well, and we barely cracked the door to that, but I'm hoping we can get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I think for future, if we ever to develop a like a Flagstaff history cast or something pod, I think that we could go into that seedy underbelly and see what we could find. Man, that might be fascinating. Of course, it might result in our homes being burned down as well, but it could be fun.
It'd be totally worth it.
Totally worth it. Just uncovering all of this, shady history
from 35 years ago.
Yeah, I just want to sit across from someone and be like, "So tell me about Shaky Drakes."
Tell me, did they do the stump grinder at Shaky Drakes?
Yeah, which was popularized at Maloney's, and maybe its origin was actually Shaky Drakes.
Yeah. Maloney's was the resurgence of the stump grinder.
The stump grinder. Man, you might be onto something. Something might have evolved all the way, and we were just at Maloney's hanging out, and there's stump grinding happening everywhere. Really, this originated.
Yeah, you guys thought that you were bringing the new thing to Flag. Little did you know that the stump grinder goes way back to Shaky Drakes in the seedy underbelly of Flagstaff in the mid-1980s.
Yeah. Dude, so we'll have to get someone to confirm or deny whether the stump grinder developed out of Shaky Drakes. Maybe Shaky Drakes was a synonym for the stump grinder.
And if you can count on two people to get to the bottom of it, it's us.
Nice and Daniel. Yeah, we'll be there.
We'll capably get to the bottom of this story.
Yeah, some less good than average journalism.
Yeah.
Right here, yeah.
So look forward to the loose reference to Shaky Drakes in this episode. And then who are we going beyond Flag with?
No doubt. So we're going beyond Flag with Neil Weintraub, a local Flagstaff legend.
Yeah.
And not just from reporting or repeating routes on his own Strava, right? Mm-hmm. Neil landed in Flagstaff in the early 80s after attending college in Iowa. He worked at the Museum of Northern Arizona prior to landing a job with the National Forest, where he worked and retired from recently after a 30-year career.
Yeah, that's saying something. 30 years for the National Forest.
No doubt. Much of his work with the National Forest was dedicated to preserving indigenous sites and restoring land sites here in Northern Arizona.
Yeah, and it's cool to learn more about those in one-on-one detail. So he worked as an archaeologist there for the Forest Service, and beyond that work, he's the founder of Northern Arizona Trail Runners Association, often referred to as NATRA.
Yeah, and that's where you get the name NATRA Neil.
NATRA Neil.
NATRA Neil, though.
Yeah. I wanted to ask him why he didn't use the word antiques in that acronym.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And Trail Runners Antiques Association still could have kept the
antiques. He which was he references NATRA being modeled after this other run group that he saw as a kid and admired.
The Antiques. Great name.
Yeah. So as the founder of NATRA, he organizes weekly group runs on Saturday mornings, and he's doubling up on those now. So he's doing long runs. And he also acts as a race director for various trail races that bring together hundreds of runners for not only great time on the trails, or partying afterwards, which he does. but also to raise funds for Flagstaff Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Raise tens of thousands of dollars every year. He does.
Yeah. He does a staggering amount of work for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Yeah. Yeah. And so you'll get a good glimpse into the partying aspect that accompanies his work as NATRA founder. Neil, I mean, truly one of a kind in his outgoing nature and willingness to give and contribute to something that he views greater than his own self. This was evident in being awarded the 2016 Arizona Daily Sun Citizen of the Year.
Citizen of the Year.
Yeah, and this is simple. I mean, it's evident in his work also, but like, I don't know how you felt, Dan, just sitting with Neil, like this, it's there.
Yeah.
Outgoing nature, giving, humility, all these things.
Yeah. When we reference him being Citizen of the Year, he could not sit there. He was squirming away.
Yeah, I think, what's the defense mechanism? Is it called deflection?
Deflection. Yeah.
Is that the one?
Deflection.
Yeah.
And sublimation.
A little sublimation in there.
Yeah.
A couple terms for everyone. Huh?
Yeah. Such a great, humble guy.
Yeah.
So with that, we hope you all enjoy this interview as we go beyond flag with
Neil Weintraub.
Welcome to Beyond Flag, a Beyond the Pines production, created by, with, and for the people of Flagstaff, building connection in the town we love. We are your hosts,
Dr. Daniel J. Phillips
and Cody Bayless, also known as Dr. Chinchilla Nice Nice. Thanks for tuning in as we go beyond flag, straight from the dunny of our observatory.
All right, Danny, we're in the Chateau Les Arborescents.
Chateau Les Arborescents. I forgot. That's the title.
That's where we are. And we're with a Flagstaff legend.
Oh, man. The fabric of Flagstaff right here.
We are here with NATRA Neil Weintraub. Neil, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. This is, you got a beautiful setup here on a hopefully beautiful and rainy day.
Yeah. That might be a good disclaimer for our listeners is there's a very good chance that we might have some thunderstorms during this recording.
How cool would that be?
That'd be great. We needed the rain. So, Neil, just to pick up, I'd be really curious to hear a little bit about your life. We'll talk a little bit about your work with the Forest Service, right, as an archaeologist, and then your connection to running. So the thing I would be curious to start off with is where were you born and where were you raised?
Yeah, I was born in New York City at Mount Sinai Hospital, right off the New York City Marathon course. I think that was before the marathon hit the streets of Manhattan. But yeah, I was. We actually lived in Forest Hills in Queens, New York, right by Shea Stadium, where I was a huge Mets fan. And then we moved to the suburbs, Elmsford, New York, which was along the Hudson River, and then ended up in grade school and high school in Scarsdale, New York.
Okay.
Just about 20 minutes north of the city.
Okay, so you were growing up in New York. Dwight Gooden, huh?
Yeah. Well, he was actually, I was in college when he came up. And so my idol was Tom Seaver, who had just passed away this year.
Okay.
And so when Dwight Gooden came up, it was like, yeah, he's never going to be, Tom Seaver.
Yeah.
Dwight was great, and then he wasn't. So
he was no Tom Seaver.
He was no Tom Seaver.
Yeah, no doubt. So after New York, it sounded like, I think I read somewhere that you went to college in Iowa.
Right. That was, I went to Grinnell College, where I ended up anthropology major.
Okay.
And that was really what ended up getting me out here was my two professors, Kathy Camp and John Whitaker, who are actually here now as they've semi-retired, and they brought me out here on my field school in 1985, and so I experienced Flagstaff in the years that I would say it was a lot different back then, but I fell in love with it that summer, and then one thing led to another. I got an internship at the Museum of Northern Arizona, and Kathy and John were doing another field school out here, so they gave me a free ride back to Flagstaff in the summer of '86, and one thing led to another, and I ended up in M&A for a couple of years, working contracts and traveling through the Southwest, going on really exciting projects, doing great archaeological surveys, but I always came back to my base at the chicken coops at the Museum in Northern Arizona, where I lived almost 2 years, and that was what really, solidified my love for the trails out here, because back in those days I could run right from my chicken coop right out to Eldon Road or, Schultz Creek. And those were my morning and evening runs back in the 80s. And boy, I fell in love with the forest up there in Dry Lake Hills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's such an amazing place. I was wondering how you got connected to running. It sounds like, did you grow up running?
No, actually,
baseball?
I played soccer, and baseball was my true love. But, running just kind of came naturally. But it was really kind of a funny story. My next door neighbor founded a running club called the Scarsdale Antiques. And they were men over 50 and women over 40. But they also put on a 15K every year, the Scarsdale 15K, which is now the Abe Simon Memorial 15K. Abe was my mentor, who one day was right after my parents got divorced. Abe, who had 4 daughters, his daughter Becky, who was my age, and we were next door neighbors. And Abe said, "You want to come for a run with me and some of my friends?" And so you can kind of see where the origins of NATRA, came out of. It was the Scarsdale Antiques Club. And in fact, it's kind of a funny story. I saw an old antique shirt posted on Facebook. A friend of mine had found it, took a picture, and I thought, I never had one of those before. And so I went to Julie McCullough, who has her shirt company here in town that's doing all the great work with the bicyclists and trying to raise money. And Julia said, "Yeah, I can reproduce that." And so I ended up, with some friends from high school. We put in together an order of 25 Scarsdale Antiques. And everybody was so into it because back in the 70s, the parents were all in the running club. And so they had that nostalgia. But us kids weren't, we weren't doing that. So
You weren't an antique yet.
So I was not an antique. I figured when I turned 57 years ago, I was like, I can finally get one of those shirts. So I made it myself, and I think I had 10 friends that ended up buying shirts, and I got one from my dad, who went to my high school. And it was just kind of a fun way to look back and then be like, wow, I can wear that pretty proudly now.
So is 50, is that sort of the criteria to become an antique?
For guys, it was 50, and for women, it's 40. I don't know if they even maintain that these days.
Okay. And you mentioned the origins of NATRA came out of that.
In a way. It really, there was a club. It was all grassroots. I don't think anybody paid a dime to be part of it. And NATRA came out of sitting around after Solstice 2001 and just a bunch of us saying, we can do better. If Imogene Pass can get, 200 Flagstaff runners, how come Solstice is only drawn 30, Yeah. And I thought it was the greatest run I'd ever done. Bill Ring and Shelley Welch were organizing at that point, and there was beer at the finish line and pretty good party, as you were familiar with. And thought, I think we can make this better and bigger. And, so we started an email list saying, well, let's run on Saturdays. Let's get people up on the course. And that just, blew up after that first email list. And then I taught myself how to build web pages. And so then I created a pretty crappy web page. And we had a runner, actually, that was a professional web designer. And, this is 2001. And so Jeff ended up making that website, making it really nice, which I can still find on the Wayback Machine. Yeah. but I think the server, the web server went bankrupt 2 years later. So I went back to creating my own that I had for years. And then NAU actually stepped in, and one of their classes took on the latest website. And I said, run with it. So that was kind of a cool way to.
Very cool. You mentioned the party after solstice, and for me, growing up, Christmas was always the thing I looked forward to, and now it's the party after solstice.
The post-race party.
Yeah. Now it's like an all-day thing. It bleeds into the next day almost.
Yeah, and that's really become the fun of that event. It just it's the event that keeps on giving, even though, the run was an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
In your case, maybe an hour.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
In my case,
Probably-
3 hours.
Probably 35 minutes for Cody, 35,
Absolutely not.
40 minutes.
But the party goes on for 5 hours, and we raise a lot of money for Big Brothers Big Sisters at Flagstaff with the raffle and the party, and so it means a lot to me.
Yeah, for sure. You've had a profound effect on that. I wonder, for our listeners, if you could explain what is Solstice, the course itself, its connection to Big Brothers as well.
Yeah, well, it's been a fundraiser for Big Brothers. Actually, a lot of that's thanks to Jerry at Aspen Sports. He loves Solstice and has been a longtime sponsor. And we just the post race party was always Aspen Sports throwing prizes into the crowd.
Yeah.
And Jerry said, Neil, we should really think about making this a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And when Jerry did that, I said, that's a great idea. And next thing we know, we're making just on the raffle $5,000 for the, this great community service that provides mentors for kids. And so, I think that was such a brilliant move on Jerry's part.
Yeah, that raffle is insane. Like, you can walk away with sleeping bags, socks, frisbees, sleeping pad mattresses. Like, it is amazing, the stuff that gets given away.
Oh, yeah, they did such a wonderful job pulling that off. And, and I don't have to do anything, and Jerry and his buddies, Waylon, they do the whole raffle. And, or my buddy David McKee's always strong-arming people into buying more tickets, and people are so generous too. That's one of the wonderful parts of the race.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. You were saying that you raised $5,000 for Big Brothers, and that's just one race. That's just the Solstice, right?
That's just Solstice. That's just the raffle. There's Solstice. A lot of people, if you want to guarantee your spot into Solstice, you can take the Arizona tax credit for Big Brothers Big Sisters up $400 to $800, and it's a line item right off your taxes. So there's like 25 people. So we're right off the bat $10,000 are going towards that organization. And so the Arizona tax credit was something I never knew about.
Yeah.
And then it's a remarkable credit that you get on the state taxes.
Okay, so that's just from the raffle and then some of the entries, but then you also do other races that help benefit Big Brothers, is that right?
Well, the Big Brothers Half Marathon that's coming up in 2 weeks, and this is my 20th year of directing that and Solstice, and that race meant a lot to me because when I first moved to Flagstaff, it was one of the first races I was able to jump into, and then a couple of years later, my sister came out and we ran, I think it was the 89 version of it, when it was at Fort Tuthill.
Yeah.
And that was always known for being run in monsoons and mud and big puddles. But it was a big lapper. I couldn't even tell you what the course was back then. And, I got to meet the board while I was doing this race every year. And, I met Nat White through it, I think, and just a bunch of other amazing runners in this town. But at the end of the race, once I got to know the board, everybody would be like, you need a beer? And there was always a keg hidden somewhere. And, and so I was like, hey, this is a fun race, And I think one year they got in trouble for maybe being a little too boisterous, so they had to hide the keg under, some table with a sheet. And then I was asked to step on, if I'd be interested in helping out with the board. And I was really interested in being a big brother. But they kind of strong-armed me into, helping organize the race a little bit better. And then we actually had to move it in 2002. 2001 was the last year at Fort Tuthill. And then we moved it downtown because Fort Tuthill was having a big master plan renovation. We didn't know if we were going to get the permit. We didn't want to redesign the course. So we said, let's just move it entirely downtown and up onto Observatory Mesa. And, that's what I was doing this morning was checking out the mud.
Yeah,
which it's notorious for.
Yeah. And we've had good rains to provide it this year. You mentioned on your way in, you just crushed 16 miles up there checking it out.
Yeah, it's a funny story because, NATRA, Northern Arizona Trail Runners Association, we used to we had a reputation early on of, going 12, 15 miles. And, we were just taking our time and enjoying and, finding a nice route. But as I got older, I didn't have, I wasn't staying in shape. And so we dropped that from 5 to 8 miles, and we started seeing the group grow, which was really nice. But then more recently, after I retired and I started picking up my mileage, I thought, I really like running early in the morning, and we sort of compromised to run at 8 a.m. To kind of meet people halfway. And then I thought, boy, after the pandemic, this group size nearly tripled. Where we were having 14 runners, now suddenly we're having 30 and 40 runners.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, well, that's a lot of people. And a bunch of them were longer distance runners. And I thought, how about a first group at 6:30 and a second group at 8? Yeah. And that's been really popular now. So now I'm being able to do, 2 5 to 8 mile runs. And just as long as I'm back for 8 o'clock. So we do the hour and a half run, whatever that nets us. And then we go back on the 8 o'clock and do it again and do something different. So it's been a nice way of getting my miles in.
Yeah. It's so cool to listen to you. You kind of just pay attention to the way something's moving, and then you latch onto that and adapt, like you just mentioned here. I also noticed there's a strong theme in your race directorship, in that if you can focus on the after party, it makes the involvement in the race better.
Yeah. And I always I leave myself open to folks sharing their ideas with me, and that's usually at the post-race party, the solstice nights of the round table, where I'm told what I can do better next year. And sometimes I say yes, and sometimes I say thank you for your ideas. It will be taken up by the board.
And you're not welcome to the after party next year.
Careful how it gets phrased.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how you could even make it better. What kinds of suggestions do they make?
All sorts of goofy stuff that I can't even remember because I don't listen to one of them. I'm a guy that likes to keep things that work, keep them going the way they go.
Yeah.
It's pretty much been a cookbook for the last. Every now and then we think, let's have some live music, and we talk about getting somebody out there, and that would be nice. But you never know with the weather, and every other year we have pretty adverse weather, so that becomes the focus of just getting off the mountain safely.
For sure. I was thinking with Solstice too, it's such a unique run in a lot of ways. It seems like a celebration of the end of the year almost, right? And then I can't remember what year this was, but didn't a couple get married during?
Oh yeah, we've had so many special moments, but. We had we had a couple, actually Terrence wasn't even a runner, but Sabrina was.
Okay.
And so he agreed to do the 10K, and they ran in these cute, bride and bride,
he had a tuxedo shirt. Yeah.
And it was, he had a groom's shirt on. It was just an amazing event. And we had Judge Moran married them, even though he was not feeling well that day, as I just actually found out he'd had a migraine headache. And he was, but he did an amazing job with that. And there's just been a lot of different moments. Big Brothers, we've actually had a wedding as well. So it's pretty neat to see how people really connect with these events and want to be part of it. I mean, how many couples, I can't tell you how many couples met through NATRA or Solstice or had their first date at Solstice. It makes it that much more special.
Yeah, for sure. I met Megan Gavin through Solstice. I imagine that's a very true kind of thing, is that people meet at these events that you're hosting, that you basically put on.
Yeah. I mean, it's, we have hundreds of people at these events, so many who have so many things in common. And then, if you're in a run and say you run up to next to somebody, next thing you know, you have a running partner for life.
Yeah.
Which is what's happened to me several times with several of my longtime running partners like Dr. Mark James, who was a naturopath for a long time, and ultra runner, and that becomes a pretty sacred relationship.
Yeah, for sure. I was wondering also, what do you think explains how much NATRA has grown since the pandemic?
I think it's, basically there's a lot of new folks coming to town for all the same reasons that a lot of us came here. The great outdoors and the access to the forest. And so suddenly kind of almost a 1.5 hiatus, there's a lot of new people in town and they're hungry to meet other people. But during the pandemic, you really couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And so the minute we opened it up, it just it was like the floodgates had opened.
Yeah. I'd be curious if you'd be willing to kind of talk about, you mentioned early on that how the town has changed since you came here. Yeah, could you list or describe in some ways what you've observed and how it's changed?
Yeah, well, I think, it was pretty small back then, under 30,000. It's grown exponentially. Obviously, we're pushing 80,000. I think we're over that now. And it was sort of this edgy, town when I first got here. I love that about it. And but the changes, I think in the early 90s, we started to see, Flagstaff sort of got put on the map. And then, of course, I think, once the age of the internet came about, you're just hearing about all the, incredible places and the natural environment that we get to live in. I think it's just, it's become this incredible destination itself. It's not just, you don't just go to the Grand Canyon, you go to Flagstaff. And, with the growth, the growth of the university has come and, we're seeing all this infilling, which, I think comes with its pros and its cons. Infilling, I think I'd rather see it infill than get pushed out. But, it's... So that that's changed a lot more traffic, but I don't complain about that too much anymore since I don't have to drive to Williams and back. So I just I love it. It's living on the south side like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I just I just hop on the Arizona Trail and say, "See you later, honey. I'll let you know when I'm back."
Yeah.
Oh, no doubt. Earlier you mentioned it's one of those things that might have brought a lot of people to Flagstaff is access to the natural world. Yeah. It sounded like in your job, that was kind of what you did.
Yeah. So, that was, I worked after my days in the museum and living at the base of the mountain. I did land a job with the Coconino National Forest and do an archaeological survey, looking for, Native American remnants of Native American sites that are out in the forest. And it was a great job. I got to walk, 10 miles a day, see some amazing places. And then I got a promotion to the Kaibab National Forest in Williams and continued to do that for the next 30 years. Wow. And I got to explore, some amazing places on the North Kaibab and on the South Kaibab. And I just fell in love with that. Rarely ever went in that little crack in between the two. I just fell in love with the forest, and I always felt like, wow, we surround the Grand Canyon. Well, actually, the Grand Canyon was the whole national forest before it was Park Service. So, that's where I found my love for federal lands, and just the fact that you can go out in the forest and run forever, and it's like big backyard. We're very lucky.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was out at Keyhole Sink for Mother's Day a few months ago, and there's that box there, and there's a paper that was written by Neil Weintraub, I think.
There's a few things out there. We created a brochure,
okay.
And then there is we created. I had one of my interns actually created the book that you saw.
Okay.
That has a couple articles that I've written for the paper, probably about Keyhole Sink, a very special place.
Yeah, it seems like there's a few that come to my mind. I was thinking, I don't know if this is the right word, but restoration or something to that effect.
Yeah,
but,
no, it talks about that's the big thing, that we try and interpret at Keyhole Sink is the forest history,
Yeah.
And then, the vandalism that occurred on the site, where we had to, restore the integrity of the site by removing the graffiti.
Yeah. And so for our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about Keyhole Sink, where it is? Exactly you did?
I mean, it's 20 minutes west of Flagstaff on historic Route 66 between Parks and Pittman Valley, or, if you know the deer farm, that's where the deer farm exit is. I think that's actually what it's called. And it's right on 66. There's a little parking lot. It's called the Oak Hill Snow Play Area, which has been there since 1938, I think. It was actually a little ski hill. And you park there, and then you just cross Route 66. You go to the north, and there's the trailhead for Keyhole Sink, and it's a nice 0.6 of a mile walk down to see the petroglyphs and maybe today the waterfall.
Yeah.
The Brigadine waterfall that I like to talk about.
Yeah. It's so neat. And so that was one of the places that sounded like you had a lot of involvement with.
Yeah, it's in the Kaibab. It's one of our premier public sites that you can go visit Native American petroglyphs and learn about the history and prehistory of the area at no cost. It's just open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you learn a lot by walking through the forest.
Yeah, I was going to say, what struck your interest? So you mentioned, I don't know if you chose to go into anthropology right away or if you took a class.
Would you read my story? No, I was a math major.
Were you? Yeah.
I thought I was going to teach math.
Yeah.
And I love numbers, statistics, and but I took a class that I wasn't doing very well in my junior year, and I was going to have to retake it and wait 2 years for it. And that timeline didn't work. And I had taken anthropology classes. I always found them interesting, but I was behind in my credits, and that's actually how I ended up out in Flagstaff. Was my professor said, "Neil, you need 4 credits to graduate next year. How would you like to come to Flagstaff?" And I would have had a summer job as a counselor, but I ended up saying, "Yeah, that sounds it sounds dope." I guess.
As the kids say.
That's what kids say now. That's what actually I needed, those 4 credits. So I spent the summer here, and basically never looked back.
Life changing. Yeah, something just popped up. You went with it. Wow.
Yeah. I didn't want, when I was at the museum, I did not want to apply for the Forest Service job because I was living on the museum grounds. I had all the great trails. I, walked to work. It was like 50 yards from my chicken coop to the research center, and I thought I was in heaven.
Yeah.
And my friend Laura at the museum said, "Oh, Neil, we got to apply for these jobs. We could, it's a federal job and there's benefits." And I didn't know what any of that meant, but I applied for it, and we ended up getting the jobs, and that was sort of the beginning of the Forest Service career.
Yeah, so you went from basically working 50 yards from where you were sleeping, if I heard you right, to then were you commuting 30 miles to Williams every day?
The transition went to Flagstaff first.
Okay.
So I was able to stay at the coops, but then as my life was changing quickly, and I didn't have the time to volunteer at the museum, so it was time to find an apartment, and luckily I found one at the end of North San Francisco, where I lived for 7 years, right at the, base of Buffalo Park.
Yeah, there you go.
And before the Lockett Trust land got split up, you had that whole valley behind the Elks Lodge to go right up to Schultz Creek in my old neighborhood.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I was wondering, just again, part of your work with Kaibab, what were some of the other projects that you worked on? Big restoration projects, anything like that?
Well, you've heard a lot about the Forest Restoration Initiative, and that's what we've been working on for probably more than the past decade, doing archaeological surveys within that footprint, and working on fires and being part of that whole restoration process. And we've seen some amazing results on the forest, especially since the Kaibab it is the driest forest in the nation. Oh, wow. And so a lot of the restoration work that's been done around springs, many often very close collaboration with our local tribes and everything. We've actually seen water coming back and higher water which is just, it's there's your reason for doing one of the great reasons for doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What changes were implemented to allow for some of that return of the water?
Well, a lot of the thinning, I think it's been a lot of the thinning that's taken place with the removing of the trees. That's had a huge impact, I think, on some of those places.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. I was wondering also, so with your work on Kaibab, I was wondering, I have some memories of hanging out with you at Whole Cabin during the Stagecoach. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some, many special places for me on the forest, and Whole Cabin is one of them. That's where we actually hosted a lot of our volunteer projects. They're called Passport in Time projects. And so we take 20 volunteers and spend the week doing archaeological survey or documentation all over the south side of the Grand Canyon, just in the forest, and the great cultural history there. And so the volunteers and I we'd all cook together, kind of river trip style for a week at a time, and everybody got really close, and that cabin has some really amazing memories. And the forest did a lot of work in 2010 to actually bring that into the cabin rental program, and so we kind of highlighted that as a place that people can stay in. The oldest cabin on the south side of the Grand Canyon that was built in 1884.
Yeah, and where is it? Close to Grandview Tower? Where is it again?
Yeah, it's actually just northeast of Grandview Tower, probably half mile as the crow flies. But as the stagecoach runners find out, they have to go downhill to get to Whole Cabin at mile 80, and then at mile 80 to 82, it's back uphill.
That stretch, I ran that last leg from Whole Cabin to the IMAX, I guess, or in Tucson, right? And I remember just starting out running up that hill like. I can imagine doing that at mile 82.
It's hard enough to drive up that hill in a car.
Exactly. It's like a death march. Yeah. The Whole Cabin, like you were saying, so people could go on and to the internet. They could reserve. You could stay there, right?
Right now, it's not. I think it's only open for weekend reservations. As a result of COVID. And the amount of time that the forest can get in there and clean it properly. So but it's an amazing. It was built by Philip and William Hull, the Hull brothers, who also had a ranch at East Cedar, where we have the aid station. I think that's where they finish up the Stagecoach 55K. There's just a wonderful history of these sheep herders that lived pretty close to the Grand Canyon, and we're in cahoots with John Hance, who had his cabin just a little further up the valley from there, is closer to the canyon, and wonderful history at that place. Yeah, and you could access, is it Old Hance or New Hance Trail from there? Just 20 minutes? Yeah, you could actually walk, if you wanted to do a long day hike from the cabin, if you were renting it, you could just probably, I don't know, it's probably a 20-minute walk over to the New Hance Trail. Yeah. And I guess for me, the thing I'll remember most about Whole Cabin is the tomato soup. Yeah, I pride myself on making that tomato soup. You get there, it's freezing, and then you open the door, you walk in, it's just this nice aroma. Tomato soup. That and the cheese quesadillas. The first year we did it, it was in October, and Kathleen O'Neill and I were at the Mogi aid station. That was because we actually had a relay team that year, and I had run the first, the second 17-mile segment, I think from Kelly Tank down to the Babbitt Ranch, East Cedar. And I had agreed to volunteer, so my team drove me to Moki, and I spent the night freezing, and all the Coke, that all froze. It was like it wasn't even like a slushy. And then we bumped the race up to September, so we don't have too many issues. But in Whole Cabin, I don't have to worry about that. That really is. That's the one protected place on the Stagecoach race. Yeah, it is like a reprieve for sure. And at mile 80, you need it. You know? I mean, that's you got to have that protection. So
Yeah, very cool. And one other place I was going to ask about that, I might be wrong, but I was thinking that you had a pretty big hand in the restoration or what happened at Picture Canyon.
Oh, yeah. Well, Picture Canyon was an amazing story. I mean, that was actually one of the first places that I visited in Flagstaff. I was working for the education department at the museum in northern Arizona, and I was sort of in charge of the Eldon Pueblo camp. There were 5th and 6th graders. And as it turned out, a funny story, because as it turns out, one of our beloved solstice runners, James Willis, was actually one of the campers that was part of the archaeological class.
Yeah,
and
back in the 80s. So that
back in the 80s. So I have all these pictures.
Yeah.
And I said, because James one day said, "You're an archaeologist?" And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, this was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And he said, "Oh man, my mom used to send me to the Eldon Pueblo camp." I said, "When were you in the Eldon Pueblo camp?" And he goes, "Oh, I was 13 or 14, 86 or 87." And I'm doing the numbers, and I'm like, "That's when I was there." And I pulled out my old photos that I took, my old Kodachrome photos. And, put them in the scanner and opened them up. And I emailed James, and sure enough, he's like, "Yeah, that's my favorite red baseball cap with the C on it." And I've got pictures of him, and us together. I mean, just remarkable.
Wow.
For a while, I think one of the first big stories Daily Sun did was they did an article on James running solstice in probably 2003 or something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, small world.
Yeah, seriously.
And so with Picture Canyon back then, you would go out there, you'd take this group out there.
Yeah, so we took I have pictures of James on one of the first trips. When I was at the museum, I had heard about Picture Canyon because the founder of the museum, Dr. Harold Colton, he found that and was a record in the files. And Don Weaver, who was the curator at the museum in northern Arizona, he had just done some research in a publication on Picture Canyon, rock art of the area. And I said, "Where's that?" And so I said, "Oh, this would be a great place to bring the 5th graders." And so we did in the afternoon, and that was the first time I saw it. Got my first pictures that I took, old Kodachrome. And today, in 2005, David McKee, who is working for the wastewater treatment plant there at the head of the canyon, said to me, "Hey, Neil, what do you know about Picture Canyon?" And I said, "Let's go for a run." Yeah. And, he took me on one of his runs around Picture Canyon. And, there was all the trash there from years and years of dumping and vehicles mired in the canyon. And David, he came up with a plan. He hatched a kind of a plan to get it cleaned up. And we had a Make a Difference Day that NATRA sponsored. And that really sort of spearheaded a big movement. It got people out, saw what was there, and the next thing we know, this Picture Canyon Working Group got founded, and the county jumped on board, and the city jumped on board. It's one of the great conservation stories of the 2000s, really.
Mm-hmm. What did you do for that Make a Difference Day? How did that get things jump started?
The city, has these Make a Difference Days. They've been doing it for a long time, and David McKee got involved with that, and said, "Neil, what can we do from the NATRA side?" I said, "Well, we can certainly buy the food for everybody. Everybody likes food." And I think I don't know if Fratelli's catered it.
Here we are at the after party. I was going to say, was there a keg hidden under a sheet somewhere?
Yeah. Right. So, so I don't know. We probably had 60 or 70 people that came out for that Make a Difference Day. And so people got to see Picture Canyon, and it just kind of fed off the partnerships that came out of that. I mean, it's hard to be who didn't have a hand in Picture Canyon.
Well, in Arizona Trail goes through there, right?
Another partner. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other trails around there. It seemed like there were some new trails that were created. Is that true?
Yeah. So there's the Don Weaver Trail, and there's a couple other trails that honor folks from Flagstaff.
Okay.
That played a role in helping preserve that special place.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the work y'all have done over there. It looks great. Everything about it is really dialed in, it seems to me.
Oh, yeah. We love going and running, taking the running group there usually from Sandy Seep Trailhead.
Yeah. That's such a fun run. You just go straight down and then straight back up to Sandy Seep, huh?
Yeah, not so much the return run is always, like, where is that last turn? Where's the tunnel? And it never gets there.
For sure. I was wondering, just to go back to, I would have been in those in the early 90s. I would have been in those Eldon Pueblo in there. I would wonder, were you still doing it at that point too?
No, I did an 86, 87. And then when I got my job at the Forest Service, I had other duties that were assigned to me. But nope, that would have been pretty funny.
Yeah, maybe I'm hanging out one of Neil's photos somewhere.
Yeah. Almost everybody's in some of Neil's photos.
Yeah, you might.
You're going to make him have to dig it up and then scan it and do all that legwork. Yeah.
But I know people that have pictures of you. Now I'm after them.
Around that time, Oh, that'd be interesting to see. To go back to running just for a second too. So Picture Canyon, that sort of thing. I can't remember if it was on Facebook or maybe Strava, but you were involved in the Cocodona. Cocodona, was it 200 or 250 or something?
Yeah, and actually this podcast is getting in the way of me tracking Dawn again. Dawn Greenwald, she's running the Uray 100 right now.
Oh, wow.
And I think she's probably about mile 75 or 80. She was running in third place. But I got to participate as a pacer at Cocodona 250 and should be Cocodona 257. They surprised the runners a little way into the race and said, "Oh, it's no longer 250 miles; it's 257 miles." I think Dawn would tell you those last 7 miles were the toughest 7 miles.
Oh, I heard that first day too with the heat. So not with the mileage, but with the heat. I heard that maybe they learned some lessons this year that they'll apply next year about it all.
Yeah, well, I think the runners had a very, very ambitious. The lead runners definitely things quickly fell behind pace, and I think they were 6-7 hours behind pace by the time. So that was the interesting part of being a pacer, because our team, which was just great, we called ours, I think it was the Team Green, and we just were adapting left and right because people hadn't worked, they had to go off, and with the big disparity in the timing of everything being 6-7 hours behind, we all sort of had to shift places, and but it was one of the most fun events, best organized things I've ever seen, considering that was the first year. Mm-hmm. The logistics behind God knows how many land managers and private lands, and it was a treat to be part of that.
Yeah, did Aravaipa host that one?
Yeah, it was an Aravaipa race, and we were just having a great time with their tracking app, which worked to a T for us. And even when we had questions in the middle of the night, are we going? Well, we're on the track. We're on the trail. I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah. I can imagine what that would be like. The first year putting that all together as well. And like you're saying, it seems like it came off like a really great success. I remember watching you on Facebook or whatever it was, and it just seemed like you were having a blast.
Oh, yeah. We were all having a blast. And the logistics, just the planning all, worked out, despite having to adapt every few hours. Yeah. But with the tracking app, and so that's what I was doing first thing this morning, seeing how's Dawn doing it. It was a flashback to 2 months ago when we all sort of had to follow it so that we could time getting to the aid stations and doing the handoffs. And, but compared to when I paced at Leadville twice for Mark James, and that was in the days pre-internet, pre-satellites, or GPS. You just went out there and did your thing, and you guessed when you should be at the right place. And I think we had cell phones by then in the 90s, late 90s. You can maybe get a signal.
Yeah. Did you ever miss a checkpoint or miss?
No.
Would you just have to go early and hang out?
You go early and hang out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Have a party.
Yeah. Different times now with all this fancy GPS
Yeah.
equipment and
Yeah.
tracking equipment, but
Yeah.
it makes it more accessible to so many more people. There are thousands of people that were following. In fact, you can see the number of people online following the Uray 100. It's really, I think that's what's really helping grow the sport.
You mentioned coming in that you're actually running more mileage than ever,
Yeah.
and in part because of what you're talking about, with using Strava and going out and running, grabbing those segments.
Yeah, the segments are a great way of doing fartleks. And, right now I just, people keep saying, you're going to do stagecoach, you're going to do, what are you racing? I have no goal. I just know that I'm feeling good and, I'm having time to do what I've always loved doing, but I haven't had the time. So, but the whole Strava thing is really, it's like I can compete against myself, I compete against others, but I don't have to necessarily step to the line on race day with all the planning I used to do for marathons and other races. There's no stress in it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing new things with your running currently, being in retirement that you hadn't done previously.
Right. I dreamed of doing stuff like this. But even, when I went into trying to break a 3-hour marathon, qualify for Boston, I might have been doing 40 miles a week and one long run. You just did exactly what you had to do that because you had a full-time job.
Yeah.
But now that I've, even though I'm busier than ever, I'm not, everybody says, your first year of retirement, you got to be careful. And I wasn't careful. And, it just, life got busy. And I was like, how did I ever do that job? How did I ever drive, the 600,000 miles I drove to Williams and back for 30 years? I like throw in the commuting time. When I took away the commuting time, it's like, there it is.
Now you got time to run.
Now I got time to run.
Yeah, what's it been like going through that change, that adjustment to being retired?
It's been a tough. I was told to not do what I started doing, which was, people ask me to do things, and I'm like, sure. The next thing I look, and my calendar's got 4 or 5 appointments on it in one day, and my wife Diana was like, you might want to slow down, and then I so I've actually taken a big step back and said, okay, I'm going to try to get one thing done a day,
Okay.
and then making sure that I get out the door first thing and get my mental and get my head taken care of on the roads or on the trails.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't sound like very sedentary retirement there initially, just got right into it. Sounds like you're doing a lot of work in a lot of important ways, but it was taking up time. Yeah,
and I'm still staying connected to the forest. I organize the Arizona Site Stewards Program. I'm the regional coordinator for the Williams, Tucson, and Flagstaff area, so it's about 60 volunteers that I communicate with. In fact, that's what I'm going to right after this. I've got a Zoom call with everybody, end of the month call. And so that's a way I'm staying connected with the cultural resource side of things and the professional community and trying to protect places like Picture Canyon. So that's probably where most of our volunteers spend their time, keeping an eye on things and cleaning up trash that's out there.
Yeah, and still very actively involved in race directing, it sounds like.
And still the race directing, which has been more challenging than ever with the mix of virtual and regular, and getting back, the anxiety of getting back to in-person races with the Delta variant now, coming into play. And so, it's been more work than I thought it would be.
For sure. Can you speak to that transition, going from race directing into the kind of the virtual race directing, and sort of what that transition is like now, like you're saying?
Yeah, well, we sort of did a virtual event. You may have remembered it. NATRA did this. My buddy, co-worker, Mike Linden, we were driving to the North Kaibab one day, and the Mayan apocalypse was coming up in a few weeks. And Mike thought, it'd be really funny to make a anthropology shirt with our, for our archaeology community and our anthropology community. And we started kicking some ideas back and forth. I said, well, if you really want to sell those, we could just make a Facebook post and tell people to go to your website and sell these shirts.
Just simple.
Simple. And the next thing we knew, we created the Mayan Apocalypse 5K Run Anywhere, and we told people to show up in Buffalo Park. And, we had, I forget how many people were up there, but we had a pretty big crowd, and it was like a snowy, frozen tundra up there from a blizzard. And, so that was a riot. So that was sort of, we ended up selling several hundred shirts worldwide to friends of friends of friends that heard about this, thought it was cool, and we had a great time with that. So that was sort of, I got a taste for it. So when we had to switch last year to all the virtual races, it became kind of I started getting creative with some ideas about, these are easy enough to put together online, and you don't necessarily have to charge for them. With the fundraisers, obviously we do, but for these other events, we did a Buffalo Park Challenge when the forest closed, and told people, hey, sign up for free and let's see who can do the most laps. So that was a challenge. It was all about me. I mean, I just wanted to have some fun up in Buffalo Park and see how many laps I could do. And given that I've had a little extra time to do that, that would be fun. And then I got the Boy Scout Troop 31. I saw them working in Buffalo Park, and I said, hey, I've got this thing going. And so the group leader would sum their daily hikes in there. And it's all free, but it connects people, like you were talking about. Gets people out the door.
Well, yeah, that's what's remarkable listening to you. Cody, you were talking about, you mentioned that we'd be interviewing Neil to your dad today. And what was it that your dad said?
Yeah, I had coffee with my dad this morning, and we were hanging out, and he was saying, he's like, man, Neil, he really is the personification of the golden rule, was his exact words. I think I got to remember what he said there. He was speaking to how much, like, you just give, how connective you are in that way. And another word I remember him using was that what he sees with you is like an abundant life as a result.
Yeah, we'll talk about somebody with an abundant life. There's all these role models, your dad being one of them, that I get to run with and get to hear their stories and the amazing things that your dad does. It's inspiring. I've always said it, one of my role models here, aside from the first guy that founded the Scarsdale Antiques, Abe Simon, Nat White, he was putting on all the Flagstaff Road and Track Club races when I got here, and I would jump in those races, and I loved them, I loved this. It was a very small community, and so you could, much like today, you know how you did at a race depending on how far you finished behind somebody. Were you on their heels? Were you, drainage behind? But in that case, it was always Grace White, Nat's daughter, who ran for NAU. If I saw her 200 or 300 yards ahead, I was pretty happy.
Yeah, you're doing good.
I was doing pretty good.
Yeah. You can always find runners like that out here. But your response, I think, sitting with you epitomizes kind of a way you respond. You turn the attention back to Cody's dad or Nat White. And you have this humility. A minute ago when you said, yeah, you just put the shirt on Facebook and then it'll go up. I don't think... I think you have this humility that leads to a limitation in you seeing that people are drawn to you because of what you've put out there so consistently. So you draw these crowds based on that personification of the golden rule that Cody's dad's talking about. And I think people are drawn to you. I hear, since I've lived here, I've heard about NATRA Neil.
NATRA Neil?
NATRA Neil.
It's just an email name. But no, it's, I think it's Flagstaff though, it's, so many of us have so many things in common, certainly running that ties us all together, but then, you're going to drink a beer, or you're going to drink some coffee with that person, and you're going to find you have a lot more in common, or you'll find amazing stories and amazing things that people do. And so, I've always, that's always been a source of the pride of being part of this. It was a community effort. Everything is a community effort. I mean, you can say, oh, you're doing all this stuff, but the energy of it comes from just what you're talking about, is, kind of putting those connections together and just getting people to, love where they live and love the people that surround them. And, it's just, I don't know, there's something very Zen about seeing those, people connected in any moment,
Yeah. And not that you do it for this, right? Like, it seems like, just like Dan's saying, is you become naturally recognized through what you're doing. Was it 2016 or 17 you were recognized as the Arizona Daily Sun Citizen of the Year?
Citizen of the Year.
Yeah. That was... Yeah, that I don't know where that. There were a couple friends that put it together, and I haven't been able to, figure out exactly who it was. So there hasn't been any retribution yet.
And there's no part of you that can accept that it was a valid award,
a good nomination. Yeah,
it was very. I mean, when you get to be part of this group of Citizens of the Year. And you see everything that these people have done. It's like, all I did was start a damn running group. There's a few other things, but it's, it's inspiring to see what, a lot of these longtime citizens that are so connected to Flagstaff. I mean, I feel I've been here for 35 years now, so, I feel like I've got a stake in the community.
Part of the fabric.
But there are people that have part of this fabric much longer than I have been.
For sure. Well, yeah, I mean, again, you've had a profound effect in your work, it seems like, in the local community here. And one way that Dan and I have closed our podcast is we really like to try to dig into your connection to the town and understand your connection to the town. And I'd be curious how you would describe your relationship with Flagstaff.
Yeah, well, I've always... I remember the first day on field school when we were driving out, we stopped to go to the bathroom at the petrified forest, and stopped to look at some of the petrified trees. And then Kathy and John pointed out in the distance to the west, and I saw these mountains, which had just been, I think, at the end of May, I think graduation of 85, there was a big snowstorm. So the peaks had a ton of snow on them. And that is what pulled me in. And then that summer we were excavating in hot, dry conditions. It was 110 degrees out near Winona. It was brutal, but we would all periodically go and head up into the mountains, have a snowball fight or something, just to, go up the snowball and cool off. Or at the time, our favorite watering hole was the Silver Saddle Saloon, which now I think is Timberline Saloon or something like that. But that was one of our favorite places to go.
Go have a drink.
Go cool off.
The Silver Saddle Saloon.
But the first place we actually went was the Mad Italian. Actually, Shaky Drake's, but it turned out Shaky Drake's was no longer a bar from what our professor remembered. It was Shaky Drake's, the strip joint. So we went across the street to the Mad Italian, where I would spend many of my early years in Flagstaff meeting some really interesting people.
Yeah, the Mad Eye. What is that now? That's on South San Francisco.
Yeah, now it's now it's the mayor. The mayor moved. Everybody's kind of rotating, playing.
Yeah, man, what a trip.
Yeah, but I think that's the, being rooted in Flagstaff is between the running and the forest and the archaeology, the history of this place. It's pretty. It all kind of comes together with all the things that I love to do.
Well, thank you for allowing us to put one more agenda item on your retirement calendar. Coming in.
Yeah, stealing your attention from Greenwald.
Yeah, sharing your time with us and, sharing your approach to life. And it's a great role model. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, Neil, thank you so much.
All right, we just said farewell to NATRA Neil Weintraub.
NATRA Neil is no longer in Le Chateau de Trees.
The Arborescence?
Arborescence? Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that. Man, I know we only recorded about an hour with Neil, but we spent a long time with Neil talking.
Oh man, Neil's got stories for days.
Oh man, for me it was just such a pleasure. Like hearing him talk about like Flagstaff and 85 and all these things. Just he has so much experience and just chock full of knowledge. Yeah, connection to people in the place here.
Yeah, but the highlight for you is the keg under the table.
Oh man, for me, I was like, there is kind of this mischievous aspect to trail running culture in a way. You know, it's like, how are we going to get the keg to wherever we're going?
Yeah. Road runners would never do that. Trail runners, they're going to figure out a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like craft beer first and then the run second for sure.
Yeah. The focus is on how are we going to be able to consume beer after this run.
Yes, exactly.
And then we'll get the run lined out.
Yeah.
Road runners, they're just focused on getting that run in.
Just trying to get the clock, trying to compare themselves against the clock.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the trail aspect. It's like, okay, let's get out in the mountains a little bit. Who cares what we're doing? But what's happening at that party? That's the thing.
Yeah. Which right there, that jumps into the biggest theme that stuck out to me in sitting with Neil is, man, I don't even think it was like he wasn't conscientious of it, but like he built a connection, or they did things before or after an event, and then the events would take off. But like a lot of his focus was like, hey, how can we get together as a group kind of before to organize this thing? And then how can we get together after to celebrate this thing?
Yeah.
And I think that's where he gets all the momentum that he does. Like he gets things moving, like the projects that he completed, the reference to Picture Canyon, but also just then race events. I think it comes from building in events that happen before and after the event.
Yeah, truly. Like we were just talking now, right? And he was saying the Big Brothers Big Sisters half marathon is really a 3-day event now.
Yeah. and it's like, and when you say event, it's not like they're getting together. Like it doesn't sound like they get together at meetings and like hammer out to-do lists.
Yeah.
Like it's like taking care of that stuff, but also, hey, let's meet up and grab some pizza and mingle, share stories, share jokes, have a good time, and then we'll get the race prep stuff going.
For sure. Super connective aspect to him, right? Like I remember him talking about doing the Buffalo Park stuff, and then he noticed like a Boy Scout troop or something was over there, and he just brought him in. Yeah, like what you guys doing?
Yeah. Just reaching out to people.
Yeah. Incredible.
And it all circles back and comes back. People are willing to jump onto what Neil's doing because he's so good at reaching out and sharing.
For sure. And in that, you know, and I think I'm thinking back to my conversation with my old man where he was saying like really what he does is he gives. And like he just gives so much. And like I think what I hear you saying is he doesn't necessarily notice like maybe the return aspect that's associated with the giving.
Oh, it cracked me up when he's like, yeah, you just sell some t-shirts on Facebook. And he doesn't realize like people will post things on Facebook. Like let's sell a t-shirt on Facebook and not sell any. Yeah. It sells because your name's attached to it because you've given so much.
So much.
Yeah. What you've given is coming back.
Right. Yeah. Beyond Flag put some t-shirts on Facebook. We ain't selling a
nothing. Yeah. Especially if you use some of the special phonetic spelling Cody design skills.
Oh yeah. No one's going to want to walk around in the world with something spelled phonetically on their shirt. Huh? Just like you're saying though, like Neil has a special capacity or capability for bringing people together. And it's funny, like, again, you're saying like these events are bigger than the actual, for instance, running event. If it's a race, the event is much bigger. And the part of that is really like the party aspect. Solstice after party is like, literally, I was joking, like, feels like Christmas. I look forward to that. You're going to get a hot dog and you're going to get some beer. And it's like, it's amazing. There's this raffle. You got to watch out for socks hitting you in the face, or frisbees or whatever. Like, it's incredible what they put together.
Show me a road race where they serve hot dogs,
orange slices and beer
for the after run.
Totally.
I gotta admit, it doesn't sound like a great after run meal.
Oh man, that's what I'm saying. Like you get these boiled hot dogs, right? And it's like Thanksgiving dinner, man.
Yeah, the appeal is the community, is what you're saying.
Exactly. There's something about the shared experience. Yeah.
Like the hot dog turns into a turkey dinner.
Totally.
Only because of the community.
Because of the community, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Neil, he facilitates that. Yeah. It really connects back to one of our values, right? Like just hearing Neil talk about his connection to work and connection to like the restoration projects he was doing. it seems like he has a really special relationship to this area and then also the people within it.
Oh yeah, both natural world and the people. One reference to the people is like whenever he would talk about someone, and this includes what we recorded and then talking to him before and after. Like every anecdote includes 5 to 10 people that he references by first and last name, and knows exactly who they are, and just he has such a gratitude while sharing their name or talking about these people. Yeah, he's so connected to others.
Yeah, it really is admirable. And in that, like, I don't know, it was just, I don't know how you felt sitting there in the interview, right? But for me, it was just like fascinating. It felt really like almost like honored, like to hear Neil tell these stories and to kind of get a sense of what it's like to maybe work alongside him.
Yeah, good times with NATRA Neil.
NATRA Neil, what were those days like at Shady Drake's, man? Shaky Drake's.
Shaky Drakes,
Shaky Drake's, man.
Questions to be answered.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll have to find out someday, huh?
Yeah. Why don't you take us out by shouting us out?
No doubt. You can always find us on the interwebs, www.beyondflag.com, flag spelled
FLG.
And same with the Insta-G and the Twitter feeds. You can find us there, beyond_flag.
Yeah, just crushing them Twitter feeds.
Question damn Twitter feeds. Question damn Twitter feeds.
Tweety bird over there?
Yeah. Tweety?
Yeah. All right. Well, take care.
Lovies.